Hello, my friend. It is Gio Savo. What a cool name. I love it.
I
Welcome,
take no
Gio.
credit for that.
What'd you say? What'd you
I
say?
take no credit for that one. That's my thing.
Well, I love it. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. So, introduce yourself. Tell our amazing listeners and watchers all about who you are.
So I'm born and raised in New York. I live in Miami right now, so I'm an East Coast guy. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16. I know that sounds crazy, but just the natural progression of life. I've always worked for myself. That's where the gray hair comes from. A lot of the pressure and stress. Dad of three kids. I have a 12, 13-year-old girls and a 14-year-old boy. So a little bit of the gray hair from those three as well. And married for 15 years. And I love business. I was just listening to you and Amanda, and it's awesome. Like the passion, the energy of creating something. So I think that's what kind of why I've always been around business is that it's that the creation from nothing. And
Yes.
so I'm excited for today.
That's so true, Gio. Like entrepreneurship, there's something about it, right? The synergy of it, and actually being at the wheel of creating your life and having these ideas and watching them come into fruition. I was just having this conversation with another guest yesterday. That episode is going to be airing later, but that's so exciting. Like we get to, live our own lives and have these ideas, and it's amazing. So you have been building businesses since 16 years old. So where did that start out for you? What was the first endeavor that you got into when you were 16? I have to hear about that.
So my dad opened a business, and when you're allowed to sweep the floors on the weekends and maybe do some paperwork on the weekends for sure. And I just was always around that piece of it. So I saw the hard work, I saw the struggle, the pressure. And then at 18, when I was going to college, I was taking business classes, and then I was also working basically around college. And the first thing I learned, so this is not a swipe at college, but I realized that theory and reality were totally different. So what I was learning in school and business didn't necessarily translate. And we had an opportunity to expand, and I knew my dad couldn't handle it with the personnel we had. So I basically made a decision to quit school about halfway through and start working full time to the detriment of my mom, who cried for a couple of weeks because I was the first of the children to go to college. But I don't know, there was something about it where I felt, like you mentioned, like the creative piece, the ability to take something and throw an idea. And one of the things that my dad allowed us to do was try stuff. So it wasn't like this is the rules, play within the sandbox. We could create. And, in business, it's that, especially we started in 1990, we ended up selling in 2018. So there's a lot of just changes technology wise and the things we did. So you kind of got to think a little different. And that was the fun part. So yeah, that was really the beginning.
Yes, I completely understand. When you're going to college, it's kind of being put into this box, especially if you have more of an entrepreneurial mind and you feel like the things you're learning there aren't necessarily applicable to what your passions are. And you start to I know for me, this was my experience. You start to feel like this is a waste of time and money. I'm just sitting in this class. None of this stuff is applicable to the things that I want to do, the things that I want to pursue. I think that's why so many entrepreneurs end up dropping out of school, because essentially we're living the dreams of our parents, right? They're projecting their degrees of success onto us. So we're like, okay, I'm 17. I don't know what else to do. Let me listen to my parents. And then you get there and you're like, actually, there's something else I'd rather be spending my time with. And you have that freedom of mind to even make those decisions. And yes, in the back of our mind, you're like, oh, mom and dad, they're going to be disappointed. They're going to be upset that I've wasted all this money, or whatever the thought process is. But when we branch out and invest in ourselves, I mean, there's nothing more glorious than that. So you guys ended up growing the company to generating, you had your best-selling year was like 5 million in revenue that year, right?
We right before the recession in 2018, we had 60 plus employees, 4 locations. So we were in the automotive business. We used to sell automotive paint and chemicals to body shops to fix cars. Now, that doesn't seem like a sexy business, but in South Florida, when you look at tropical storms, hurricanes, the export market, and there's no mass transit, it's a really big business. And we did something really cool that leads into what I do now. And we based everything on relationships. When we opened, we were the new guys on the block. So you get these guys kind of coming in, these technicians. And if you think about the automotive business, they're usually rough around the edges, and it didn't matter to us. It was like they're coming in, treating them great, and the customer service piece and teaching along the way. You grow a business that long. You don't grow a business for 28 years on sales. That's a byproduct of value and relationships. And I saw that firsthand. And I remember there was a guy one time, it just popped in my head. He walked in and he had a bunch of dollar bills or whatever it was, cash, and it was soaking wet. Not from the rain, from sweat. When he bought some stuff, the first thing you do when you grab it is you kind of recoil. And my dad's like, What are you doing, dude? That's hard work. And I'm like, you realize real quickly the value of things. So we built it from nothing. When I say nothing, like just loans, basically. And then through the years, we got better at what we did. We got better at our skills. We tried different things. Certain things worked, certain things didn't work. And it blossomed to right about, like I said, 5.3 million, I think was if you add it all up at that point. We had always done millions after the first couple of years, but that was the height. The problem was the next year, the recession in 2009, which, I'm sure some of you guys and some of the people on the call remember, the recession is always about real estate. Everybody, you hear the real estate craziness, but automotive was the second industry up, and we were just hammered. About 50% of our business disappeared because it was just a trickle down. So as bad as the pandemic was for the economy that we felt recently, I think the recession was just 10 times. It touched every industry. And so one of the things, and I think this will relate to everybody that you talk to, is that you build something, and that was 18 years in. So you get really good at something, and it's like, what just happened? It was like an atomic bomb went off, and lost most of what we had built. I would say that.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Wow. So as at that point, I had my 3 kids were young, obviously wife, and my parents were a little bit older. So there was a part of that I had to absorb some of the losses just because they were older, and you question a lot.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Question yourself. And it's like you're the captain of the Titanic. You're going down with the ship, and it hurts. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But I would say, I always tell people I don't regret it. And the reason why, I never lost sight of my dreams, because this is the thing. You open a business not for the business. You open a business to get you to the goal that you want. Right. If that's not the goal. The goal is the business. You're in trouble. Very few businesses are going to go 100 years. Right? Yes. So the goal is to get me to what I want currently and what I want in the future. I didn't think this way as articulately back then, but I knew I had goals and dreams. And I looked at them, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to happen anymore. And I had this, I was like, I don't trust the industry a little bit. There was a lot of issues with insurance companies kind of manipulating things at that point, but I didn't know anything else. And I think a real key was that I was always open I was always listening and learning, and to go back to what you said about school. If you don't go to college or you leave early, it doesn't mean the learning stops. It's just a different type of learning. If you're not open to that, you're done. You're dead in the water. So,
exactly. You have to be ready to invest in continuing and furthering your education and your mindset. I think the disconnect in school is you have to select these courses, and these are the electives, where now when we learn, we're like, this is the area that I'm lacking on that needs to be strengthened in order for my business to excel, in order for my personal balance to excel, in order for me to be a better version of myself so that I can show up 110%. What are the things that I need to be reading? What are the things that the people that I aspire to, have an adjacent life to, what are they reading, right? So that's kind of the path now, where it's less structured, but it is more strategic and more intentional behind the long-term goal. So when you mentioned your goal, what was your short-term goal and your long-term goal initially?
I'll go long-term first. I love to travel. So I had traveled previously. I've seen a lot of things. And so, when you get older, you're like, oh, I'd love for my kids to go to Italy and for my kids to go to France. I'm a foodie, so I can give you the restaurants I want to eat at. Those things. And just not having to worry about money. Being able to go someplace going, I'm doing this or I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And, that's number one. And then the big future is, how am I going to retire? How can I sustain this? I don't, you don't want to grind forever. There's a period of time you should. So that was it. And so it was the current, being able to give my kids something, a life that we wanted designed. And then the things that I've always wanted to do that are still on the bucket list.
Yeah. That's so good. There's a rapper whose name I can't even remember, but I remember what he said because it was so amazing. He said, the best thing about having a lot of money is no longer having to think about it. And I thought, that's where I want to be. I want to be exactly where you said, where you want to take a trip or you want to do what it is you want to do. And you don't have to say, well, I need to save for 6.5 months. And I need, you want to get to a point where there is that financial freedom for you to do the things that you want to do so that you can fully utilize the essence of this life that we came here to live. We don't just want to eat and work and die. You know what I mean? There's got to be something more to life than that. So when you were coming towards the end of the automotive business that your father had built, then you started to transition into financial literacy. What was the motivating factor behind that transition?
So a lack of knowledge would probably be the first thing. So right around 7 years ago now, maybe a little bit 7 years ago, a friend of mine comes to my house. We're having a beer, just a conversation, and the ideas of investments and insurance and mortgages and taxes, the world of personal finance. And, I'm sitting there going, I don't know that the way I'm supposed to. And the way I describe it now, it's like business finance and personal finance is like cardio and weightlifting. They're in the same gym, but different rules apply. So you're good on one end of it doesn't mean you're good on both ends of it. And as I started to look at different things, I realized if I would have known some of this, we could have put some buffers around things. That was number one. And the second thing, it kind of goes to the goals. I think about this, right? If we don't know what we want, if we don't define it, if we build a business just for today, you're in trouble. Like, in other words, it's got to pay the bills for today, but it's got to pay the bills for the future. We never thought that way. We were like, we'll build it large enough. And when you're doing those kind of numbers, if you sell it at that moment, it's got some value, but technology changes quickly. Politics can change things. Landscapes can change. So if it's not designed for today and tomorrow, that's a problem. Never. So when I learned about the tools of personal, like you said, personal finance and like financial literacy and financial freedom, you're like, well, what do I do to do that? Oh, if I would have known that, I could have baked it into the cake of the business. And that's a difference. So like, kind of jumping a little bit, when somebody builds their business plan, tell me what the future is. And don't tell me you're going to start working on the future tomorrow. Because if you build, let's say, a landscaping company, and you're supposed to put away, $500 a month into an IRA to grow into something, but you can't afford it, well, what is that business going to be worth in the future? Nothing. So I didn't think that way. So as I saw that, and it kind of lit a light bulb, well, who do I talk to? Coworkers, clients, manufacturers, reps. And the more people I talk to, the more people I realize that I would say financial literacy, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, people are a 1 or 2. They think they're a 3 or 4, but they don't know until you know. That's not bashing them. But if you talk about going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation with school, it's not taught anywhere. You know how to rhyme a poem, figure out the angle of a triangle, the circumference of a circle. You use those things as an engineer or working at Papa John's. But understanding finance, it's the universal. It's one of the only universals that we should be taught, and we're not. And so you go at this hard, tough game of life in general, whether you work for yourself or someone else, and it's like, just go figure it out. So I just blew my mind. And then I fell in love with like talking. Well, what if you did this and if you did that? And when you see someone's eyes light up, like, oh, it's possible. That was it for me. So I started building at nights and weekends. And this is where the connection was to the other business. I noticed in finance that there's 2 big problems, in my opinion. It's very segmented. So it's only investments, only insurance, only mortgages, only debt, only taxes. And that's a problem because you may be great on investments, but if your debt's out of control, it's affecting it. Or if you don't have debt, but you don't know how to save, right, or budget. So they're different, but they touch one another. So I go, okay, that's problem number 1. And number 2 was there's no real relationships. Now, I know that I probably offend somebody when I say that. Yes, there are relationship-based advisors. But in general, the industry is based on pressure and a sale. And that's that. If you remove that, that's the magic. Like if I sit with someone going, there's no sales today. There's no buying, there's no selling. I don't want you playing into jujitsu for the next hour, trying to figure out that magic word's going to skew you. Then we're open. And then the information can go in. And then what happens? You make a great decision because you know the how and the why. And that's the key. So I guess one of the tools that I've built through the years is I can talk about finance without talking about finance. Meaning, I'll give you a perfect example when I talk about like cardio and weightlifting in the gym. If somebody goes to the gym and has a goal, let's say to run a marathon or to lose 5 pounds, two things are important. What's the starting point and what do you want, right? Because if I'm 10 pounds overweight and I want to lose 10 pounds, that's one thing. But if I'm 10 pounds overweight and I want to run a marathon, everything changes.
Yes.
Right? So that's number one. But the second thing, it's not about cardio though. It's about cardio and your diet and your sleep and your stretching and your nutrition. All those things matter. So if you go to a coach and they're a holistic, they look at everything, what are they going to say? Gio, your cardio is awesome, but that Wendy's diet is not going to help you. Or you're eating good, but you're not sleeping right. So think about that approach. Well, when somebody comes to finance and they're like, I want financial freedom. Well, first off, what does that mean? And the second thing is, if they're going to an investment guy, guess what the answer always is? Invest. Go to a debt consolidator, it's always consolidate. But that's not always the answer. If you come to somebody that has it all, and they're like, wait, let's really look at this right, and you kind of organize it right, that's magic. But you got to teach first. Because when you tell somebody do it, like go run on the treadmill, if you don't know why, you're like, I'm running, but I don't know what I'm here for. But if you know the why behind it, guess what happens? When your coach isn't there, you're still going to follow through. So it's the teaching part that's so important, And in my case, I can have a lot of empathy because I've been there. When somebody goes, Gio, I had that, I'm like, I know exactly what that's like. But there's tools to get out. And so
they're not intimidated by it. They're not intimidated by the fact because you've been there, you've done that. But that's so good. I hate it. But we have to take a break right now. Just give us 29 seconds, you guys, and we will be right back. All right, my friends, so we are back with Gio Savo, and we were talking all things finances, and you are just amazing at what you do. I can already tell, right? So you were talking a little bit about the goals, knowing the goals. I can relate to that because a lot of times what happens is when my clients come to me, they know they want to build a business, they have an idea, but they don't necessarily know what that looks like, right? So my question to them is, well, what do you see in your future? What are your goals? And people will say, well, I want to be wealthy. What does that look like? Because what's wealthy to me is not necessarily wealthy to you. 100%. $1 million to someone else is life-changing, but $1 million to another person is just scratching the surface of their potential mentally, right? So defining those terms on what your goals want to be, what they need to be, is essentially the first step to success in everything you do, right?
100%. So I go back to not talking about finance, but talking about finance. If I want to figure something out, think about this, right? I'm in Miami. Let's pretend you're in New York. That's a 21-hour drive. If I said you drive south, let's do a financial workshop, you're going to ask me one important question. What's the address? Could you imagine I said to you, it's 21 hours. You'll figure it out, but you can't miss Miami. If you miss it, you'll go into the ocean. You would think I'm crazy. Now, if I said this to you, I'm not giving you the address, rent a Ferrari and drive faster. You'll still think I'm nuts. Now, why do I say that? Because people are going to go on 15, 20, 30, 40-year journeys to their retirement with no address. There's no map, then they're going to get lost. And in their head, they go, when I make more money, get the next side hustle, get the next degree. That's like going faster. No, you need to know where you're going first. So it's exactly what you said. You got to know the end point, and then you reverse engineer it. And everything else in life works that way, right? I want to bake a cake, I get a recipe. I want to build a home, I get a blueprint. I want financial freedom, I'll just wing it and see what happens. It's too complicated and it's too long. So when I talk to people, and they say financial freedom, I'm like, that's like putting your GPS, you want to go north. North is a mile from you or the North Pole. It's kind of, it really is nothing. I
Yes.
want to know, where do you want to live? How do you want to live? What does that look like with inflation? Like, we can figure all that out, obviously. What age do you want to retire? What's the lifestyle you want? Because the money is just the transfer of value to that. It's not, the money doesn't mean anything. The money, like, if you have $1,000 sitting there, it doesn't mean anything. It's what you do with it or not do with it. So we
Mm,
need a
right.
value of money to get us there. And then when you think about that long-term game plan, well, you got a lot of obstacles in the way. But if you can have a GPS mapped out, what does it tell you? Where the traffic is, what to do in certain places. And I want you to picture this. If you've ever been driving, and you know when you're driving into a place you don't know and you lose the signal for a minute, what do you feel? A little anxious, you slow
No, I,
down. If it's
yeah.
like 10 minutes, you're starting to argue with your partner a little bit. If it's like an hour, you literally will stop going, I don't know where I'm going. Picture picture what it feels like without a financial game plan. We're
Mm,
making money and it's Friday night and I don't know where it's going and it's weeks on end and it's 2 years down the road and there's these arguments that happen and nothing's going on because you're just driving in circles.
mm. That's
So
so good. That's such a great analogy, and it helps paint the picture of what so many people do with their finances. And I think it comes a lot from our relationships with money, right? And the fact that we aren't taught these just basic fundamentals about our resources and how to use them. And your mind doesn't extend past making the money and paying the bills. What's my overhead? What are my expenses? And maybe I can afford a pizza afterwards. Like that's pretty much the extent of the realm of how we feel about finances when we're afraid of them. But that's so true. Just like you have to have a business plan so that you can map out the objectives of your companies and your goals and where you're going. And do you want to be boutique or do you want to be multi-million? You need to determine, do you want to own your business and pass it down? Do you want a legacy business or do you want to position it to sell? It all has to have a plan, right? So
yeah.
I love that you are so crystal clear and so great in the aspect of the analogies that you use because it really simplifies it and it makes it feel not scary because it is. I mean, people finances, they hear finances and they tap out because we're not born and raised to really be comfortable with that conversation.
Well, it stems from our parents, right? So, like, if I sit with someone and you start talking and they're like, oh, yeah, of course. Oh, because mom and dad taught you when you were younger. How do I know that? Well, my mom and dad didn't know. They knew hard work. So, what do you learn? Hard work. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
foodie. So, my kids are naturally going to be foodies. But if my mom and dad knew about investments, I would have been investing when I was 13 and 14. How do I know that? Because I started teaching my kids when they were younger, let's say 10, 11, and 12. Now, my 14-year-old goes, okay, dad, what's the stock market doing? I'm like, I would have never thought about that. So we can change the language in our house, but we got to be good enough first. And this is, when people talk about generational wealth is the money, but the more important piece is the knowledge of what to do with it. Because you can give someone 100 grand, if they don't know what they're doing, it's not going to be much. But if you can give someone $10 and they know what to do, it's just a matter of time. So that was one of the big things for me too. I'm like, how can I teach anybody else if I don't know? And then it just kind of blossomed into something like this, obviously, which is
Yeah.
it's so cool. I mean, honestly.
It's so amazing that we have. Oh, my husband and I have overcome our own, money blocks to have these conversations with our daughters, and we bought them financial books, and we have conversations about stocks, and them evaluating how they spend their money. Because my daughter, she started her pet sitting business at 11. She's 13 now, and she's had this business for 2 years, and it's like at first, of course, it was typical mindset of an 11-year-old. Oh, she started off charging $25 an hour. And she's like, okay, I made $50 today, let's go to the candy store. And I'm like, wait a minute, Hayes, you got $50 here, let's think about how we can evaluate this money. Do you want to put it in a bank so you can save, have a little bit of spending money off to the side? It was open. It was conversations. We talked to her about investments to expand the money, how she can reinvest it into her pet sitting business to strengthen it and then validate a cost increase so that money continues to expand. We had all these conversations with her that I never had with my parents. You know what I mean? It wasn't even a topic. It was taboo, as a matter of fact. Don't talk about money. My money's my business. That's it. That's the extent of it, right?
Yeah.
So so are you, I imagine you do, but have you and your wife dedicated time and intentionality behind sitting down with your children so that you're, help making sure that they're well informed for, their adult spending lives?
I would say this. So I did a little training with them, and we used $100 as an example. So you get $100. What do we do with it? You invest 50, save 25, and you could spend 25. Now you could spend 25 instantly, or build it to buy something a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go, why? I go, because think about, here's another analogy, right? If I have an apple and I eat it, that's like spending it. If I have an apple and I put it in the fridge, that's saving it for later. But if I take that apple and bury it in the ground, when I have an apple tree, that's investing, and I'll have more apples, but I won't eat the first one, right? Now, what's the key? I take some of those apples, I bury them again, and now I have an orchard, and now my family can eat forever. So that they understood that, right? Because think about it. We're 2023. Delayed gratification is very difficult in a generation that's brought up to have everything instantaneous. There's nothing. That's a curse of this generation. It's not their fault, but when you can do everything quickly, like think about, when I was young, going to a restaurant was a big deal. Now there's restaurants that are coming to you in 5 minutes. So everything's quicker. So to tell somebody, take some money, hold it and let it grow, it's a hard thing to get. You got to have a little bit of faith.
Right.
But what happened was, what blew me away was my daughter got $100 for her birthday. Okay, Dad, what do I do? And I go, well, what do we do? Okay, we invest 50, we save 25. And I'm like, okay, now she doesn't know what investing deeply means, but she knew that was the right thing to do. And that's the key, right? And so we do that for sure. And I've done classes for students. I did a young women's entrepreneur group that was like 13 to 17 last summer. And instead of you talking about apples, I talked about a mango orchard, just to get them thinking, right? So that later on, when something happens, they go, okay, wait, I know there was a concept somewhere in my memory, and they can flush it out more, because it's key. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're great at their craft. They're not great at this. It's just because as a business owner, when you're building, you're like, I'll get to that eventually. I'll get to it eventually. And it's like a decade down the road. And, there's a lot of things that could be put in place. And that happens also on the personal side. It's just that dark little corner where like, well, I'll eventually get to it. And
it's a scary corner too at that. You can't see the boogeyman. There's an imaginary boogeyman in that corner. So you're like, I will definitely get to that at some point, just not right now. So what kind of services do you help your clients with in your business?
So the first thing that I always do 100% of the time when I sit with someone is we'll speak for 30 to about an hour, depends on the questions, about the rules and tools of finance, with no expectation other than I'm going to teach you the basics, the building blocks. Now, some people know a lot, some people know a little. The point is to give them a level playing field. Because then you can look at what they're doing and what they want and go, okay, well, this is why these things in this order. So it's kind of like really basics. So page number 1, we're going to sit with an hour. At the end of that, we'll build a financial GPS, anywhere from 10 to 30 pages. Now, if they have the business, sometimes we'll build multiple ones because you got the personal side and how it kind of can pepper into the other one, and then go from there. Now, the thing is, the typical industry, again, is either fee-based where they're charging for the hour. I make money a little differently. I make money from the companies I work with. So I can talk to a client 1,000 hours and never going to tell them to cash out me money. And that little switch allows us to go deep on things. Because then somebody calls me, thinking about wanting to buy a house. Let's run the mortgage numbers, or I have an idea about that. And so the real first investment is coming from me to them, to be able to show value. And then the business that I built, I do no advertising. This is probably the closest advertising I've ever done. It's all referral based, and that way, because I want you to picture a sale. If I sell you something and I ask for a referral, you're thinking, who needs to buy that, or who doesn't want to deal with that? But if I ask you who wants to learn, who wants to add some massive value, it's kind of universal, and I allow it to go where it goes. So that's really the difference. And when it comes to businesses, there's going to be that conversation of, I'm working on this or that, and I don't see it. So there could be some tools that I've used before that we can implement as well, that kind of ties everything together.
Oh my goodness. Fantastic. So tell the people how they can reach you, Gio.
I'm super simple. So I just pick, when your producer asked me, email me. You can see it on the screen, giosabo21@gmail. I'm very personal, very one-on-one. I'm very quick to answer because I think that's a pet peeve of mine. I hate having people wait. So connect to me and just conversation. I know people know things. Sometimes it's just a twist on something. Sometimes it's right now in 2023, the information age, unfortunately in finance, there's a ton of bad information. And it's hard to filter because you're like, this is a great video that I watched or this or that. Can I filter it? That's where the teaching comes in. Because if you teach somebody the ground rules, you kind of can't BS them later on. So, I would say come to this thing, open mind. We'll talk about things, ideas you have, and build the vision and have a game plan to follow. With that said, they can take it and run with it. They can do things we need. It's kind of like it gives them a chance to have the empowerment would be the key. And that only comes with knowledge.
Oh, so you guys, for a free strategy consultation, reach out to Gio at giosavo21@gmail.com. You guys, he's amazing. If you need help with your finances, if you need empowerment and learning about the financial literacy, and then mapping out a plan, right? That's the important part. You want to have a plan in place so you can actually take the tangible steps you need to take to meet your financial goals. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. And you guys, it is time for our prayer disclaimer. Okay, so we close out each podcast with a prayer to honor God for our abundance, okay? And then Giovanni is going to be leading us in prayer today. I'm super excited about that. Gio, are you ready?
So your producer asked me, and it instantly scared me. And so I'll be honest with you. I'm like, okay, I got to address that in myself because that's where the learning happens. So I was like, no, I went, yes. So
yes.
I think I finally understand gratitude the right way. And so I wanted to do a thank you and a gratitude towards the difficult things in life, towards the challenges, because that's where the learning happens. When you fight and your back is finally against the wall in the corner and you realize that and you realize you can only go forward, that's the magic in life. That's where the growth happens. So I thank God for the great things. But the challenges are really, when you look back, those are the things you talk about. Those are the real memories because you grew from it. So I want to say thank you for the hard years, especially the years, we just talked about and all the other ones that are coming up as well.
So. Oh my gosh. What a beautiful sign off. I'm about to cry. Like that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for carving out some time, for spending some time with us today here, Gio. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that's watching and listening. I hope you all have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.